I was asked to talk a lot about ARCs, to talk about what's going on out in the field, and I thought what better way to do that than to bring some of our area regional coordinators in to talk about their own projects. So for this afternoon session, we are going to have a brief review of 4 different projects, 5 technically, across the United States with 4 different coordinators. And then after that, the 5 of us will kind of do a roundtable discussion. I've got some questions prepared for them that we can kind of walk through back and forth. And finally, we'll have the audience Q&A. So we're still going to use the text numbers that'll be posted here at in the TV screens. So if you've got questions for our ARC coordinators or me, certainly go ahead and text those in, and we'll have a Q&A at the very end of the session. So I'm going to have Dr. Meghann Pierdon get us started.
All right, thank you, Erin. I'm glad to be here today. My name is Meghann Pierdon. I'm a faculty member at the University of Pennsylvania. I work in the veterinary school, and I work specifically at our New Bolton Center, which is where we have our swine research herd. I do teaching and lecturing, but I also do our swine outreach, and so that's how I ended up being in charge of our PRRS disease control program. Just for a little bit of history, I get to go first today because of seniority, probably in age, but also in the length of our program. Our program has been in existence for over 10 years, but I have only been at the university since 2012. So we started in the beginning with the negative areas in the goal of maintaining and expanding. So we cover the entire state of Pennsylvania, and even at that time there were large regions that had no PRRS virus, and so it seemed like a really great opportunity to kind of start with those areas and expand. Since 2012, when I came on, I really think that what I brought to the table was that I really updated the database. So the information is only as good as what we put into it. And my first goal was to get really, really good foundation and have that database current and up to date and very accurate. The other thing is that Pennsylvania is not a very big place, and as you'll see from some of our disease numbers, maybe you guys will wish you lived there in a few minutes. But I know the politics of pretty much everyone that lives there, all the producers, all the veterinarians, and all of that. And so it was pretty easy for me to step into that role and to understand kind of where people were coming from. And so to give you an example, one of the people who was not in the program and said he didn't want to be involved, I knew the reason that he didn't want to be involved was that he had gotten a 144 previously, and he had kind of felt very maligned for sharing this information, and so he did not want to be in the program anymore. So I had to kind of coax him to be in. I gave him the opportunity to belong to the program without sharing any information for like a year. And so little things like that I think helped get a lot of different people into the program. So at this point, the program covers about 90% of the pigs in Pennsylvania. Obviously, if you're talking about sites with 1 or 2 pigs on them, we don't have 90% of the sites, but we have upwards of 90% of the pigs represented in the state of Pennsylvania in the database. And I'll show you some numbers in a minute. And also in 2012, we started using Basecamp for all of our coordination and all of our information sharing. At this point, our participants, we have 22 different companies, and those companies range in size from having, 4 sites total all the way up to having 165 sites is our largest participant. And then we have 50 independent producers that have 1 site, and that's their site, and it's in the program. And you can see that, obviously, the most number of sites we have are finishers, and in the end, we have about over 1.25 million pigs represented in the database. Soon, I've done a coordinated effort with the Nyman Ranch producers. A lot of them are Amish or plainclothes Mennonite, and they don't communicate very much outside of their communities. And so recently I've done a push with their marketing coordinator to try and get those guys involved. So hopefully soon I'll have another 65 Nyman Ranch sites that are included in the program. This is our map. You can see this is a screenshot of our map, so it doesn't quite cover some of the very bottom portion. And we do have sites that are also in Indiana and Maryland, just because the participants also have sites in Pennsylvania or their sow farms. They're in those states that move pigs into Pennsylvania. But this is a pretty good snapshot of where most of our pigs are, and you can see they kind of cover the central portion of the state. I have two maps. This map is, there's one version that's available live for the producers. They can go into it. Most of them use the measuring tool, and this is what they can see. They can see the site, and then the symbol which tells them the site type and the site size and the status. They cannot see what my map shows me, the other version, which is when I click on that site, it tells me everything that I have in the database about that site. And so we felt that those two different versions would mean that I had a tool that I could use to help them, but then this could be live without anyone feeling like maybe they were sharing too much information all at once. So some of our project goals, what we really started with about 3 years ago were these regional control zones, and these zones were picked by the group of participants. And the goal was to be PRRS and PED. At the time, it was just PRRS negative, and now it's PRRS and PED negative in these zones. The zones were chosen for a high number of multiplication animals or sow units. A couple of them are counties, and then a couple of them, like this one I'm showing here, is a town that has a lot of sow units in it. And so our goals were really to reduce the number of breaks that were occurring in these areas. Since then, we've moved on to doing 3-mile buffer zones around all of our sows, gilts, and boars sites in the state of Pennsylvania. We had started with a 2-mile buffer zone kind of around these units, and we had gotten down to only 4 positive sites in those buffer zones, and so the group wanted to move on to doing a 3-mile buffer zone. And so we've recently expanded that, and probably in the last 3 months, to be a 3-mile buffer zone. And so then what are some of the metrics we use? We do track the amount of PRRS, the prevalence of PRRS over time, but then some other things that we track are also this metric of the PRRS status in the 3-mile buffers. And so this is just an example of one of the reports I would send out on a monthly basis, showing them how many of the sites are of what status in those different zones. So the information flow, basically what happens is that for disease breaks, I have a template, and the veterinarians will fill out that template, and that template includes pretty much everything. So it has the site name, the site location, which is using the address, and then they also have who feeds those pigs, are there any other animals on site, who's trucking those pigs, where are those pigs going to go next, is it some sort of downstream flow, or are they going to the packing plant, which packing plant are they going to? And then there's also a place for the veterinarian to make comments about, we believe this is a lateral introduction, or we do believe this sow flow is now positive, or something like that. So those updates get put out through Basecamp, and then those are automatically emailed from Basecamp out to all of the people on the list. And then we also send it out to fax machines for the Mennonite community, because a lot of them do have fax machines. And then I even do some mailings. The other thing that I do is I do monthly updates. So not everybody tells me status changes that happen just because a barn changes flows. And so monthly I really try and make sure that those are changed in the database and changed on the map. Quarterly I'll do a big update where I make sure everybody's is correct. These monthly reports that come out, they go through all these different reports, PRRS status changes, PRRS trends over time, PED positive sites, and PED trends over time. One of the things I think people use a lot is we have a list of PED positive sites that comes out every month. So they're not dependent on looking at the map or any other information. They can just look at this list of positive sites. And then that gets sent to those 75 email addresses, the 12 fax machines, and then I do the mailings quarterly to about 15 people at this point, which I expect will probably increase with the Nyman Ranch producers coming on. We've recently just started to report strain information, and so still working out how to share that information in the best way. So this is just an example of our monthly PED reports. So you can see we started reporting it in January of in December of 2013, and so you can see all the way up until now, and that's still a current number. We have 2 positive sites in the state of Pennsylvania. So, and then you can see our trend over time on the bottom I do as well. So just an example of one of the reports we would do. So some of the take-homes from this project, I really think that The reasons that we've been successful is producer engagement is very high. They're all very interested, and the thing they're most interested in is being PRRS negative. So unlike some programs, we don't have a lot of vaccine usage. We really have people are striving for a negative status, which really makes sense with the amount of density and the geographical terrain and everything that we have. So some examples I can give you of our producers being engaged would be that I had the map down a couple times for maintenance, and I keep getting emails from people, where is the map? Why can't I get access to the map? And I'm just thinking, oh, great, you're actually using the map. So the other thing recently, I sent out a list to everybody that had a list of all of their sites, and then a column for the distance those sites were from sow, boars, and gilts. And I got emails back from people telling me how much they love this list, and I'm thinking, well, for a not very emotive group, it's very great to get an email where someone loves something that you sent them. So, and then the other thing about that list that I thought was really rewarding was that we've recently had 2 PRRS breaks in the last 6 months. So these sow flows were going to be positive, and both of the companies that had these positive sows sat down with this list, and they used it to determine how they were going to flow their finishing pigs. So to me, the fact that the project is changing people's behavior as to where they put pigs is really a sign of our success. And then too, that we have these 2-mile radius, the 2-mile radius around these sites, and that they were not content to stop there, and that they wanted to keep expanding and to move on to the 3-mile radius. So those are some of the take-home points from my program, and I'll hand it off.
Great. Thanks, Meghann. So our next project, our next brief overview is the North Central Illinois project. And so Carrie Pollard has been heading up that project.
So my name is Carrie Pollard, and 6 years ago, almost to the day, I got a phone call and a voicemail from one of the veterinarians that had attended this conference. Carrie, we have an idea and a project. Little did I know what we would be getting into 6 weeks later, let alone 6 years later. So I do work with Bethany Animal Hospital and the swine group there, where we have a lot of influence on this project. Our history, so we began in 2009, 2010, was the first time we kind of really kicked this off. What really instituted this was we had about 20,000 sows in the area that was going to change genetics. We had a PRRS positive previous breeding stock source, and we were changing to PRRS negative. How were we going to bring these naive gilts into these 20,000 sows? So we had massive changes. We rolled 15 herds almost that first year. Made huge changes in biosecurity, just a lot of massive changes that our project made really early on. And then that fall we had 144. We'll step back. So I would say over time, 6 years out now, we're sitting here, step forward, step back, step forward, step back. We're really in a sideways movement. We kind of have clean areas, and we kind of have, unfortunately, maybe farms that are starting to get labeled as a little dirty. The ones that break tend to be the same ones that break. They're also big farms. They also have a lot of things that touch them. They're also in dense areas within the project. But what really happened when PED came in is it provided positive motivation to kind of not only continue this project, but realize what we already had in place. We had an email list. We had some knowledge of where the sites were. We had knowledge of where everything was. And so our first PED farm didn't hit until about February of 2014, whereas many of the other people had it hit much earlier and much harder. We only had about 30% of the sow farms, and we got the benefit of learning from many of you who had the opportunity to experience that earlier. And we really think the project, the emphasis we made on biosecurity, the ability that we had to talk to each other and know what was going on made a big difference when PED hit, and it's delayed in our area. So we have about 80 sites. Most of you probably, if you drove here, drove through it on the way in. We'll virtually go from Chicago and make a line a little bit west of I-39. We have about 45 producers, mostly independents. We do have some fairly good-sized 500 to 2,000 sow independent farrow to finish producers. We've also got sow cooperatives, and about 90% of that pig flow is associated with either via pig flow or with a veterinary relationship with Bethany Swine. And that's something that's kind of grouped us together and allowed us to have a lot of forward movement that a lot of projects may not be able to accomplish. So I actually stole a slide from a presentation Dr. Knoll and I did several years ago, and this was our original goals. We wanted to improve our production. I think that was, we work with our producers. If they're successful, we're successful. And so we wanted to improve sow farm. We wanted to improve wean to market production. That was a main goal. We also wanted to improve our communication. We thought if we could communicate, we could prevent reinfections of different farms, and we could also decrease that new strain introduction. And if we could improve our biosecurity and figure out where our links were, we could cut some of those off. And in the case of particularly like PED, we could cut them off quickly and hopefully in time to prevent spread. And we wanted to learn. That's why we are very willing to come to conferences and want to learn from other people. We want, I'm learning a lot about 174 today, something we haven't seen yet. What things can we do to prevent and what are the best interventions? I think that the ARC projects in general across the nation have been very good about learning, and so other areas can learn from them. One thing that's maybe not unique anymore, but very, very large percentage of our herd is vaccinated. And if the sow herd is vaccinated, so is all the downstream flow. If we're vaccinating sows, we're also vaccinating piglets. Virtually, we have one sow farm not vaccinating and some seed stock. Otherwise, we're vaccinated across the board. And that's something that has hopefully helped limited some of our spread, but more than anything, it's gotten producers talking. We've seen some advantages, and one of the things that our group finds really, really valuable. As far as flow of information and frequency of what goes out, we give routine PRRS status and sequence information, and I say the maps are made and largely ignored. And that's not to say to diminish them, it's to say that our producers want really, really precise information. And our group is also very, very willing to share. So what I get with a map is I get lots of questions, well, what's this dot? What's that dot? What's that dot? What they want is what's listed here on the bottom of the screen, and that is when we have a PRRS break-in in the area, we send out an email alert. And it goes out as soon as we've got a sequence back from and an okay from the producer, which virtually occurs simultaneously. We give county, we give site name, site type, strain. And we send that out to everyone in the database that's interested, that is participating. And this is what our guys want to know. They want to know where the new one is. They want to know that quickly. And this actually came about because of the very first sow herd break after the project started. It had already gotten out via 5 or 6 people at the basketball game that night. And they said, we want this to get out. We don't want anyone else. We don't wish this on our worst enemy. So it came out as a really good way to share this and kind of stop the coffee shop talk and the rumors and make sure that everybody knew what was happening and when it was happening. One thing we're having to work on and do a better job on now is once a site gets cleaned up, so when we send out an upbreak, this is the new one, these guys are now clean, or we take them off. We also did this for PED. So what were the take-homes that I had? They're long-term. They're definitely long-term projects, and they're very adaptable. We were able to adapt this, and I think most of the projects have for PED. I think we're going to be able to adapt it for Seneca Valley or whatever the next thing we see is, because at least the infrastructure is there. That information and sharing is already there. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We started out as a sprint. We realized we should stop. You need to take your time. These are long-term projects, and the motivation definitely becomes more difficult as you pick off the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit in our project is gone. We're now to the much more difficult things and really trying to get yourself amped up to really sell large, hard projects. It gets more difficult as you go through time. PED came in. The PRRS project a little bit took a back seat. It became the PED project for about a year. So it definitely requires motivation and getting out to other groups as you go along to maintain your motivation. But we have moved the needle. We have farms, I go in to do trainings. The sow farm employee said, well, I don't know, I've never seen PRRS. We have employees that have been on our farms long enough now that they don't know what we're talking about. And that's a little bit of a scary thing, but it's also a very, very good thing. We have some farms that have remained negative since the original rollovers, something we've never been able to do before. And we've changed the mindset. And again, I believe we're better prepared for PED and whatever comes next because of these types of systems that can be adaptable. That is what I
Thanks, Carrie. So the next brief overview we have is with Sonya Maas from the Southeast Iowa Project.
Thank you, Erin. My name is Sonya Maas. I'm the project coordinator for the Southeast Iowa Project, predominantly located in Washington, Iowa. I'm actually the human resources coordinator for one of the systems, a little bit different, kind of the oddball here. As opposed to being part of the production system, I'm dealing mostly with the people as opposed to the pigs, but I started this project as a coordinator back in 2010. I just come onto the system and they needed a coordinator and that became my role and I've been there ever since. The project was started by a small group of neighbors in an attempt just to protect their own sow farms. You'll see on the map here in a few minutes that it's a very, very pig-dense region, and so there are very tight quarters, and we have a lot of sow farms in very close neighborhoods. And so they wanted to go ahead and try to protect their sow farms, and with the help of Dr. Tim Lowe and some of our local veterinarians, they started this group together. Today we have 54 producers. Some are independent producers, some are large systems. They're working to control PRRS in our area, PED and other regional diseases. Right now, we're looking to stabilize and control as opposed to eliminate, just given the pig-dense region that you'll see in my map here in a few minutes. 449 sites are currently enrolled. We have over a million pigs on feed. We work with local veterinarians in our area as well as regional veterinarians who consult on our herds. Sequence and mapping support come from BI. We have over 600 sequence in our database currently that Erin works on. We, in Southeast Iowa, we're the pilot project for the ARC concept, one of the pilot projects along with these ladies. Pilot project for the disease bioportal as well as these ladies. And we've been working with Iowa State on their SAD connection to bioportal, the Secure Animal Health Diagnostic Database also. So this is our map. Let me stand up here for a second. This is our primary and peripheral area. Primary area is Washington County. So this red line here is Washington County. That's where most of our sites are. We do flow pigs from systems within Washington County out to other counties. And so we did decide to expand the primary area into the peripheral because we want to encompass all of those systems, and we didn't want to just seclude the Washington County here. So we moved up into Iowa County along Interstate 80, down the Mississippi River, and along the border of Iowa. So we've included all of those sites as well. And as you can see, we have a lot of sites in this one small area right here. And this is the area that it initially started and with those sow farms right there. Demographics of our project, like I said, we have 449 sites. Most of them are finishing sites. We have 34 breeding sites within our project. Over the course of the last 5 years, we've increased our vaccination percentage greatly. When we first started, there were very few sites vaccinating. We have a lot of our sites now vaccinating, sow farms vaccinating, then downflow, nursery and finishing pigs are obviously vaccinating as well. Same as, we've had here, we have ups and downs. We have a lot of sites that go negative, and then we have a break in our larger systems, and so it flows downward. So our nursery and finishing pigs will break. So we've seen a lot of fluctuation. But again, with the density of the area that we're in, we're still working towards stabilizing, controlling it. Goals of our project have not changed since the very beginning. Initial goals were to increase awareness of PRRS, added PED, and then other diseases, and their associated costs. Our last meeting, Dr. Lowe talked quite intensively on Seneca Valley, something that a lot of our producers had heard nothing about. And so the education that we get with the awareness of not only PRRS but other diseases is invaluable to our producers. Another goal is to reduce the incidence and severity of regional diseases. So we want fewer introductions of new highly pathogenic PRRS strains. We want to decrease the time of PRRS shedding and improve biosecurity, which is one of the things that I feel that we've done a great job not only with our producers, but also allied industry partners. We had a meeting a year or two ago, and we invited anyone who comes on site, electricians, our culling trucks, our rendering trucks, our garbage people, whoever it is, they were all invited, and we educated them on PRRS and biosecurity and on cleaning their tools. We gave them the best tools for them to be able to help us to ensure that we keep our farms clean, and so that they're not tracking PRRS back and forth between sites, because they're not only working for one system, they're going from this system to this system to this system to this system. So we wanted to make sure that they were aware of what we were trying to do as producers. And we wanted more consistent sow, farm, and grow finish production. So, decreasing PRRS, it's obviously going to give us better production. And then lastly, we want to study the movement of regional diseases, which, we've been working with BI closely on studying that information. So our flow and frequency is very similar to everyone else's. I send out bi-weekly status updates. So bi-weekly I get an email or a text message. I contact them first, but from a herd veterinarian or from the producer themselves if they had any type of change in status. If they filled a barn, if they had testing that indicated that they have gone negative, if they vaccinated on a new fill, whatever it may be. They send that to me. I then summarize that status, get mapping information from Enrique at BI, and then we distribute that to all the participants via Basecamp. And that's on a biweekly basis. They receive that email. Other information that we're gathering and collecting and sending out to the producers is sequence requests. So all sequence requests from the producers come directly to me, and then I send that off to the lab so that we can have some sort of consistency so that we're ensuring that all of our sequences can be put into that one database. The herd veterinarian or the producer typically contacts me with that, and then I forward that on to the lab. New site enrollments, that was very heavy in the very beginning because we were enrolling the neighbors and reaching out and contacting everyone that we could think of that may want to enroll in the project. It's dwindled a little bit because we have most of the neighborhood and the area enrolled, but they do, if a farmer builds a new site, we do enroll those sites too. Herd outbreaks, those are typically sent via either text message or email, telephone calls. I've found that since we started this project, a producer, if it's a sow farm or a finisher, and they're in what we call a 3-mile, it's a 3-mile buffer like you guys have, but we call them clusters. It's a cluster around each sow farm. I've found that when I make contact with those producers, they've already talked to their neighbors, and their neighbors have already notified them that there's been a PRRS break or that they have a new introduction, and so they've already reached out to each other, which I think is fabulous because prior to our project, that wouldn't have ever happened. So it's great that they're making the contact themselves. And then another thing that we do is meeting requests, educational tools, issues, concerns. We typically funnel those through Basecamp as well. So the take home for Iowa County is that, or sorry, not Iowa County, Southeast Iowa, is that our producers and veterinarians have taken ownership of this project from the very beginning. They're really committed to the project and ensuring that the herds that are participating in the project keep the momentum, and they want to ensure that their herds stay healthy, and so they're communicating. We have a long way to go to get Washington County PRRS under control because of the very dense area that we're in, but the group is really driven to achieve the goals because they have seen results in the last 5 years. And so they've been driven to try to work together and collaborate and continue this project.
Great, thanks, Sonya. Okay, so last but not least. Last but not least is Kayla Donald. She's got 2 projects, so we'll try to keep them straight.
Yep. Thanks, Erin. I'm Kayla Donald. I work for Iowa Select Farms. I work for the Health Services Group, but I am not a veterinarian. So, as Sonya mentioned, I'm an oddball too. But I am the coordinator for the Southwest Iowa ARC and the Northeast Iowa, Southeast Minnesota ARC. These are the two youngest ARCs in the group among all of us. Southwest Iowa started in the spring of 2013, and the Northeast Iowa, Southeast Minnesota started in August of 2013. So haven't been around very long, but for both areas, they kind of had the same mindset. They wanted to keep PRRS under control and to monitor it with, as you know, there are a lot of pigs in Iowa, but these two ARCs, they were a relatively low risk compared to as in central Iowa or other places. So they wanted to monitor the PRRS movement and to maintain negative status mainly on GDUs and sows and boar sites within both ARCs. Specifically in the Northeast Iowa, Southeast Minnesota, we are now reaching out to all the larger producers are involved, but we are trying to get all of the independent producers because there are a lot of those. This tells you who's involved. So we have 8 active companies within the Southwest Iowa ARC, and that makes up 224 sites. This tells you by county how many are in each, and our projects are a little bit different, so for confidentiality reasons, every status is the same. They're all gray, so you can't make out who's positive, because if you thought about it really hard, many of you would be able to come up with the 8 companies that make up those sites. So we have 73 wean to finish sites, 12 nurseries, 60 finishing, but we have a lot of GDUs and sow farms. So we have 39 GDUs, 35 sow farms, and we have 5 boar studs. So this project is very important for these 8 companies because there's a lot invested in there. It's not just majority finishing space. There's a lot of GDUs and sows and boars. The Northeast Iowa, Southeast Minnesota, that makes up 6 companies. So again, you can probably figure those out. So for confidentiality reasons, I have kept those blank. We have 159 sites, 28 wean to finish, 18 nurseries, and 96 finishing. Not as many sows and GDUs, but still very important. 15 GDUs and 12 sow farms. We started out as just the 3 main counties, but they've bridged out just a little bit based on who has what sites. Project goals for both of them, obviously they want to understand the risk from neighboring sites, and we don't have everybody included in the ARCs, but we're working on that as being relatively young. It's hard to get everybody involved right away. They want to mitigate the PRRS transmission between sites in the area. So they've worked really well to say, hey, I have this PRRS break in this area. What can I do? Where can I move these pigs so that they're not near your sow farm or anything like that? We don't share sequences currently, so we're working on trying to get people open to that. And in the future, we hope to do that. And specifically for the Northeast Iowa, in the beginning it wasn't rolling as well as it should have. I've only been the ARC coordinator for a year on both of these, so we're really trying to gain a better understanding of who all's in the area and reach out to some of the smaller producers and figure out, how much viral circulation there is based on who's coming in and out. As far as information flow, both groups are currently only sharing PRRS statuses. Every once in a while, if a sow farm breaks with PED, or here recently, Seneca Valley, we've shared those, but we're not tracking it or anything like that. It just, right now, we're mainly focusing on PRRS. For every month, I send out an email asking for updates, and once I receive updates from all of the 6 or 8 producers, then I update all of the statuses in BioPortal, which they can all log into and see that map, and they can see everything for every other company. So we're very open to sharing within the ARC, but like I said, I'm keeping things confidential for all of those producers. And then I send out notifications through Basecamp if there are any major PRRS breaks, or when maps are updated on BioPortal, I let everybody know. And the monthly reminders are mainly just for finishing sites. As many of these mentioned, it's just for when flows change or pigs move in and out. But then every time there's an outbreak, specifically on a sow farm, a GDU, or a boar stud, they would send those to me as soon as possible, and then I get that out to the group. And if we have sequences, we sometimes share those, but we don't share every sequence that every company has. But if they haven't seen that cut pattern before, then we try to move around and see who has in the area. A main take home for ours is we've done a lot of teamwork together to try to understand what's going on and try to keep PRRS out of the area. So we had one sow farm within one of the ARCs that broke with a 174 earlier this year that no one within the ARC had seen before, so we haven't had any 174. But they didn't have any way to move the pigs out of the area. So another producer offered up a site that was in central Iowa where Dr. Hollis said earlier we already had it. So we were able to get the pigs out of the ARC area to protect all the rest of the sows and GDUs that were there. And luckily nobody else broke. I mean, it was a good team effort that the one company, they lost a space for a wean to finish turn, but it was worth it to get the pigs out of the area to protect their other sow farms and GDUs. So we've really tried to work together, as a team to eliminate, to keep PRRS stabilization, but also, to keep it eliminated, as some of them don't see it that often. So we all kind of have the same end goal.
Thanks, Kayla. So initially when I proposed to do this, and we thought that, okay, we'll have 4 different project coordinators come up and talk about 5 different projects. Somebody said, won't that be really boring? Aren't they all the same? But I hope that you've found out that these projects are somewhat similar. They use some similar techniques, but they are actually all very unique. Certainly the makeup of participants is different. Certainly different sizes. So Carrie's just got 80 sites. But in a relatively small area. But Meghann's trying to take on the whole state, and she's got her Amish that she's got to try to find communication methods for. So that certainly makes the makeup of participants a little bit different. The goals and objectives, a lot of them are very similar, but there are specific goals and objectives that have come out of each individual project as well. And then the communication styles and frequencies can be a little bit different as well. So what is actually being shared, whether it's just PRRS status today, or if it goes into the gory detail of Meghann's survey that they have to fill out when they have an outbreak. So I think that there are some unique aspects of the different area regional control projects. And then one of the things they talked about was what defines a successful project. And so I'm often asked, Erin, why don't we talk more about these project successes? How much data is out there? Why can't we roll them all up and say these are successful and those are not successful? I think you've heard a little bit about what makes a successful project. And in some cases, it's simply just producer involvement and producer engagement. And those producers are happy and then they feel like it's successful. It could be that there are fewer positive sites within this buffer zone, this 2-mile buffer zone. It could be fewer emerging strains have come up in the area, or just simply the teamwork of working together on a project. So I think there's a lot of different ways to measure success, and that makes it challenging as we look at different and more ARC projects. So right now, I thought I would take the opportunity with this panel and go through a few questions I thought the audience might have. And so since the beginning of our session was all about the 174 virus as a background, I thought it would be interesting to hear from each of our coordinators as to how the 174 has acted or impacted each project. So, Meghann, you want to go first? Sure. It shouldn't take long.
Yeah, we have not seen any 174s in our region. Mostly we seem to be dealing with, there's one 184 that's moving around, and then we see MLV move around like wild type. So we'll see non-vaccinated herds break with MLV. So those are the 2 strains we have currently moving around.
So we unfortunately have seen a lot of 174 in the last month or 2. Erin's last dendrogram she sent out, there was a lot of 174, all typically in the same area. That could indicate aerial movement, we're not exactly sure, but it is flowing downstream. A couple of the larger producers did break with the 174, and so that is flowing into our nurseries and finishers. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot more than the rest of the ladies, so they're lucky that they haven't seen it. I was upstairs texting with one of our production supervisors asking what he felt clinical signs have been. Is it similar? We recently had a 184 and then we're hit with 174, and he said that he feels that it's very similar to the 184, hasn't seen a lot of differences, increased mortality, just a titch, but not that much. So that's what we've kind of seen in our area.
Perfect. And Carrie said that you hadn't seen it at all. We're knocking on wood.
Yeah.
And Kayla had just seen the one case, and they were able to get it out of the area. So there's not been any other reports of that yet. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about with 174. So the next question I get a lot is, okay, these area regional control projects, it sounds nice. It's kind of a social experiment. But what value do those producers get from participating? So what do you think the big value is that producers take away from being a participant in your projects?
I think just knowledge of what is going on, and again, quantifying some of it, whereas before, everybody eventually knew or thought they knew what everybody else had. But now maybe you know, and it can be shared openly and correctly, so that can be done. I'd say knowledge, not only learning, but also sharing.
And I think to expand on that, Kayla gave a great example of teamwork within the project. Different systems working together to make sure that they're flowing pigs away from sow farms if they have that opportunity. Some of the smaller ones don't have the opportunity to change their flow. But if they do, we were sitting at a meeting, at one of our project meetings, and a guy pointed up and he said, "What is that?" And, that's my GDU. And he said, "Oh, well, we're going to move PRRS positive finishing pigs to that site right there." And so completely changed their viewpoint. And there's, 2 different operations, 2 different systems, and the guys worked together to ensure that we didn't bring positive pigs from a finishing site right next to a GDU. So I think collaboration between neighbors that wasn't there, at least in our project, 5 years ago. They were neighbors, they were all farmers, they were all looking for the same end goal, but now they're working together too.
On our project, I think probably the biggest benefit for the producers has been a decrease in disease prevalence. So when I started tracking our PRRS prevalence, we were up somewhere around the 20% of pigs, and now we're down in the 12% range, and I think that's really benefited a lot of people. And I think also, I can think of individual sow units that have finishers that are very close to them that used to break rather routinely just because people didn't know they were putting positive pigs right next to that sow unit. And so, in my mind, I can think of these individual guys that don't have PRRS because of this program, and so I think that individuals have benefited and the whole system has benefited by having less disease.
I think everybody brought up good things, and a lot of it really is teamwork. If you know what's going on, you can make better decisions, and our hope is that the ARC helps you make better decisions or changes the way that you think about things, such as, I've heard talk about not using LVI anymore within ARCs, or, trying to use strictly just MLV and things like that. So it just raises awareness of what everybody else is doing, and maybe you can make decisions together to not only benefit yourself, it benefits everybody within the ARC and within the area that doesn't even know what you're doing. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that you're not the only one benefiting from it.
Right, and so I've seen, as Carrie said, it's not only just having the knowledge about what's going on around you, but also squelching the rumors of what you might think is going on around you, but actually may not actually be happening around you. So knowing, no, he's not doing that. No, that's not the way it is. Or no, he really is working hard at this. It's just taking some time. Or I think it helps foster some of that communication a little bit better, make it more real, so we're not making decisions based on theory rather than fact. So let's see. Carrie said something. So one of my questions was, and it came up during your talk, I guess, but what, as a coordinator for an area regional control project, what's most rewarding for you? Okay.
For me,
what do you get out of this?
For me, I have seen individual producers. We believe we are now down to all clean butcher, at least all the producers committing to having all clean butcher trucks coming back to the area. We probably had one producer that we worked on, and finally the last PED break on the finisher, I think, was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, and we think we've made progress on some of those biosecurities. Again, you can't prove what you didn't get, but I think there are sites that we have prevented PED breaks. We have prevented PRRS breaks. We may not be able to prove it, but I think that individual producer, I do have the ability to track actual production information because we do have so much knowledge and control over our area. Our wean to finish numbers greatly increased. We could see the nursery improvement from having more PRRS stable flows. So we could actually have a few production metrics here as well. Those producers, when they're successful, we're successful. So I really form friendships with the producers in these projects.
So do you, in your project, is it mandated that they have to wash all these trucks when they come back from market?
Nope. It is certainly not mandated. There is no requirement. I don't think anybody has any kind of you have to. You can't make a producer do anything, especially a hog producer. They don't want to. But it is certainly, it took probably a little bit of area pushing. Again, I think Sonya said this in her project. These families have known each other for a long time. They've went to grade school together. They have a lot of history. And so it kind of takes the one guy going first and then it kind of snowballs. So I think there's definitely the producers pushing each other. Shouldn't, if it's coming from a veterinarian or if it's coming from one of us or an outside allied industry, it doesn't mean nearly as much as your neighbor. And I think that's always a good thing.
I think from my point of view, I benefit from it as, a representative of Iowa Select Farms because we make up, a large portion of the sites within both ARCs. So for me, it's good to know that I'm making a difference for everyone else, but also for, the company that I work for. So,
what's rewarding for you, given that you work in HR?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest reward that I've seen so far is, and I've touched on this multiple times, and maybe that's because I am in HR, it's the human connection, the people that were 5 years ago when somebody broke with PRRS, they were pointing fingers at their neighbor. Well, he brought, this 144 in, or he did this, or what did my neighbor have? And now, instead of pointing fingers, they're making phone calls and notifying everyone. And so I think that just in our small neighborhood that we're in, it's built those relationships back up, and they're working together as opposed to pointing fingers. And so, I work for one of the producers, and so it's gratifying seeing that my boss can have a relationship with his neighbors on a more beneficial level, and it's going to impact the entire industry.
I think for me the most rewarding thing is just seeing these these guys that don't have PRRS and knowing that we've had an impact on that. And so, a lot of these independent guys, knowing them and knowing, having now formed friendships with them and just knowing that they don't, they haven't had to deal with PRRS because of this. And also just watching, like everyone else has said, these people forming connections and actually changing their own behavior in order to benefit other people, I think has been really rewarding. And I think we've gone with the let's share it until someone says I don't want to share that, and I think that's been a good learning for me, that a lot of they're willing to share stuff, and it's been really beneficial to everybody.
So on the sharing thing, going to that, so there's obviously some concerns about sharing, whether that's sequence information or status information publicly. Are there hurdles? Are there confidentiality hurdles within the project as far as sharing specific types of data or sharing it within the project or outside of the projects?
Well, our project, I believe probably all the projects have hold harmless agreements. So at the beginning when you enroll a farm, they do sign a hold harmless agreement. We keep everything confidential within our group. We are now sharing the sequencing information so that we can upload that into BioPortal and SAD. So our producers have given us the consent to share that information to a certain extent. We're not sharing any type of production information. We, with the introduction of the BioPortal and SAD, we had to collect premise IDs on all the sites, which proved to be quite challenging to get sites that didn't have premise IDs yet enrolled and registered. But we gathered all that information. So the information that's being shared is via premise ID as opposed to specific systems or specific, we're not putting a 911 address and we're not putting, coordinates outside of our group.
I think in the beginning we had some hurdles that a bunch of people thought other people were going to like steal their finishing barns and stuff if they shared the addresses, but I think people quickly learned that that really wasn't a thing. And then I think too there was this hurdle that I think people were a little afraid to share information because they thought other people were going to be mean to them. And I think over time that kind of has gone away just by sharing and then not having people be mean to them, and mostly just people being grateful that they shared the information. And so while it sounds silly, I think in the beginning there was a lot of trepidation about, well, if I tell people that I have this, am I going to be hearing at church that, so-and-so said that I made his pig sick or blah, blah, blah. So, but I think that the atmosphere has been really good and that we've really gotten over those hurdles. And we do have hold harmless agreements. And also as a private institution at the university, we're not subject to the Freedom of Information Act, which I know was important to producers as well.
Right, so finding a place to hold the data that's not public.
Yep, exactly.
So that can be a challenge for some projects as well, especially statewide projects. So, any hurdles with confidentiality on your ends?
Yeah, as Sonya mentioned, in the beginning, well, we're still in the beginning stages, but in her beginning stages, they had problems with, people wanting to point fingers, and that's why we don't share sequences currently at this moment, because there are problems with that. Is everybody, they want to find out who the first one that had it was, and then they're not happy with that person because they brought it into the area, and it takes a while to get over that and to build the relationships. And so my two projects are in the beginning stages, and we're working on that to where we're more comfortable sharing sequences and not pointing fingers.
And a little bit, we're as open probably as most people or could be. And the biggest thing that probably came is one of our initial 144s. I don't think we'll ever figure out how it got there. And so sometimes you just have to say, blew in on the ferry truck or whatever. You don't know, and you're not always going to know. So it's sharing, and hopefully that first one we didn't share it soon enough. The first sow farm that hit, we did. How many could we have stopped it from getting there? What routes were there that we could have cut off? And I think when we got to PED, knowing all the routes and shutting them off quickly was very valuable, and that's why everybody was. I've got the AmeriGas people on my notification list. It's you go as far as anybody will let you go.
Okay, so then another question I tend to get is, what do these things cost, and how are they funded? So are they expensive to run these projects, and how do you get those funds in order to keep them alive? Do you want to start?
I think they can be expensive to start up, especially if people are not doing any kind of regular testing. However, most producers are doing some kind of testing. If nothing else, it's production monitoring. I'm stable, everything looks good, I had a problem, and I go find out what that problem is. We definitely benefited from being one of the earlier projects and having some of the PRRS cap funding. BI has been very supportive as some of the technical tools, like many of us have talked about here today. And then it probably also takes either a system or a veterinary, extension type system or a producer to almost donate the time of a coordinator. We don't. Bethany doesn't get any additional funding for donating some of my time to do this, and so it has to be that important to a system to get that initial piece in place. And I think that's where most of the projects you see that move forward, successful, not successful, but move, have a coordinator that is kind of working with a larger group and has a champion.
I would say for us in academia, we don't really donate anything. So my time is funded 1 day a week by the Pennsylvania Pork Producers Council. And every year I go to them and I ask for that funding. And I think, the first year I went and asked, I was like, a little nervous, and I was asked to leave the room, and there was some debate. And then the next year I went to ask, they were like, oh, you should probably leave the room. And so then I left the room. And then this year they didn't even make me leave the room when they do the debate about whether or not they want to fund it. Because I think they see, I'm really hopeful that they see as much value in this program as they see in, how many billboards and what are we going to advertise at X hockey game. So I think for them, those producers see enough value in it that they're willing to use some of their poor producers' dollars to fund it. So that's how I get the program funded.
But is there any diagnostics funded or anything else?
We do fund some portion of diagnostics, but mostly it's for getting individuals enrolled. So like if they don't know their status when they're enrolling, we'll pay for their testing. So like with the Nyman Ranch guys, we'll pay for testing those flows to get them into the program.
Initially, testing for our producers, they cover the cost of their initial testing. We've got support from BI on sequencing testing, and then again, a lot of background support from BI. Otherwise, the producers are taking care of their own costs. It comes, biosecurity has been one thing that we've really pushed, and it can be expensive to make changes that a lot of them have made, but they've seen the benefits of it, so they're investing in a healthier herd by making those biosecurity changes, such as we've had several farms have filtered. So, that is very costly, but if you can keep PRRS out of your farm by filtering, that's a huge investment.
And my time is obviously donated by Iowa Select Farms because we benefit directly from both of the projects, and we, utilize Basecamp and BioPortal funded by BI, and basically we just use diagnostics that all of the producers are taking on their own because they're going to take when their farm breaks anyways. I mean, they're going to sequence it. They're going to try to find out what's going on. So we're just utilizing, the positives that they receive and the sequences that they receive if they don't know what it is. And then for finishing pigs and stuff, we just, whatever they're placed as, that's what their status is unless they know something different. So, if they have a nursery that breaks with PRRS, then they're probably going to know that, and they're probably going to sequence it to find out whether it matched the sow farm or what their original status was. So not a whole lot of spending on our end.
Yeah. So I want to wrap this up with my last question here. So what is the one thing that you want to take home and share with your project participants? So one thing you've learned today or seen from another project, or even from we had a workshop yesterday. So anything there that you'd want to take home and share with project participants?
I think I want to be a little more aggressive in I like the template of our outbreak, of the outbreak reporting, and of our outbreak responses to the individuals in the project. I think that we could be a little more aggressive with that and give them more information and get more information from them about the flow and where the pigs are going to go downstream. What were the first signs? And so I think that those would be really beneficial information for the rest of the group. So I think that's something that I'd like to try and implement. I don't know if they'll go for it, but I'd love to try that. So.
For me, it's interesting to see how much sequence sharing is going on, and we did a workshop using BioPortal, and so I'm excited to go back and see if there's visual ways that I can share this with producers that will be helpful to them, and then if maybe there's a different level at which the veterinarians want to interact with that information. I think I've learned some good ways that maybe I could get that information to both of those distinct groups, and hopefully they would both get something out of it.
I think for me, having the two youngest projects, there was a lot for me to take home, but the main thing is that this isn't a sprint. As he said, this is a marathon, and it's going to take a while, and I had to learn that, I guess, to be able to tell them that maybe. So I try really hard and wish that we were already sharing sequences and things, but I realized that it's going to take longer than my mind probably thinks it should.
And it will.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably one of the things that I need and why I enjoy coming to some of these meetings is motivation, because this is not my only project, and I much prefer to spend my time in the barns. And so having to sit in front of a computer, and Erin worked very diligently and hard on me for a long time to utilize BioPortal. I think I have finally given in. So I'm thinking, oh geez, another database, another Excel sheet, another whatever to keep track of. Like I said, I much prefer to spend my time in the barns. I milk cows morning and night before I go to and from work too. So the ability to make maps that are useful for producers and veterinarians to learn and see, we have been able to learn some of those things that I thought we already knew because we knew so much about our pig flow. There are some things you can still learn.
Great. Dr. Waddell.
We've generated a lot of questions. And very good. Very nice job, all of you. Really, Erin, I think we might syndicate this and give Dr. Phil a run for his money. So, the first question was, who enters all the data? Who?
Us.
Yep. So, do the diagnostics on any of the projects go directly in, or is it all a manual process?
All manual.
All manual.
Yeah, so Sonya's got the pilot project to make it hopefully not manual, and that's like coming. It's like real close, and that'll make life a lot better. But otherwise, it's pretty much manual.
Yeah. The next question was, have there been any successful incentives that you've identified for testing and reporting? Anything that you've hung out there for carrots?
There might be more sticks than carrots.
Well, for testing, we did, to get people to enroll, I did pay for them to get testing. And that was a carrot, I think, for some of the individual producers, independent producers. I think that was a carrot for them.
A carrot to start off, but probably not much after that.
Right. And that was another follow-up question, is who pays for testing in the various projects? Is it pretty much individual driven?
Yeah.
Yep. What about the diagnostic lab? Do you guys try to encourage the same lab within the project, or is it, if not, do you see a variation in the results?
I guess the initial testing is the choice of the producer. And then when we submit sequencing, we go directly to BI, and Iowa State we're using. But initial testing is the choice of the producer.
So it's kind of a similar question. Do you mandate any procedures or protocols within the ARC, like PRRS vaccination or trucking, transportation, SOPs, anything like that?
I think we've hit that. There's no mandating for anyone anywhere probably, but highly encouraged.
Right.
We definitely highly encourage not to use LVI. We highly encourage vaccinating. We highly encourage washer trucks. But I think we always, if we encourage something, we encourage it with the best thought of the producer in mind.
So you've taken them right up to the line, but you haven't.
You can lead a horse to
over.
water,
Right.
but you can't make them drink.
And we do highly encourage a surveillance program of how to, testing for the sow farms, 30 due-to-wean piglets, 6 pools on those 30 due-to-wean piglets for sow farms to try and figure out if we can get naive status. And then for finishing in nursery pigs, as the clinical signs arise, that's when we ask that they do testing. But that is highly encouraged, not mandated.
Anybody else? So here's the next one. Does your ARC have expectations for a national PRRS program, or what is the end goal with regard to PRRS? Any of you want to go national?
I don't think I want to go national. I think statewide is plenty. And I think for us, the end goal, originally it was to be, PRRS negative in the state. And I think for us, it's really just to keep sow farms from breaking with PRRS, including the multiplication. And so that's really our end goal. And then maybe at some point to have like negative regions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all have enough in our own projects right now to try and expand them. But, that would be quite an undertaking to take on a national project. But
well,
yeah, that would have to be your full-time
we would all
job.
have to work together.
Knowing two, and
Yeah.
the 3 of ours are in Iowa. That's a lot of pigs.
I think Dr. Murtaugh said PRRS goes where the pigs are, so I think Iowa might be
Yeah.
a little further down the list.
I think I would add one thing. I think we can do things better, as I know when I started being an older coordinator, so to speak, sharing within projects. Like, I know I have pigs that moved to Iowa. I'm trying to figure out if they're in any one of these areas. Some coordination between the projects that are existing, I think, can be done and improved.
This question was about PED. So how many of the ARCs are now include PED? All 4? I thought I heard that.
Ours does not.
Does not. 3 out of the 4. Kind of more granular question, but have you guys calculated the cost of diagnostics on a per pig basis for any of the ARCs? Have any idea?
Yeah, we did. I would have to go back and look. I want to say it was like $2 a sow or something at some point, but I'd have to go back and look.
I'm sure it varies from year to year. And,
yeah.
What are the other major costs associated with ARCs? Time. Yeah.
I think if you really want to do it and do it well, these things do take time. And like when you ask who does the data entry, that data entry takes time, and making sure that all that information is accurate and that everyone gets you their information. Like none of those things are like fun or glorious, but they are time consuming, and I think that's the biggest expense.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, it does take a lot of time, but I think it depends on the project. You know, as I said earlier, with Iowa Select Farms, you know, we benefit from it, and so we're not spending any extra money that we don't already spend. I mean, we already know all the statuses and all the companies that are involved. They are doing all the testing on their own that they would already do. So I don't think that, you know, for our ARCs, there are not any added costs. So it just depends on the area and the producers involved and what it takes to get them involved.
Just got another question handed to me. Carrie, you said, and it was a follow-up to something you said, how much collaboration are there between ARC projects?
Not as much as I think there could be. One of the biggest things is I at least have emails. And so I can try to get a hold of, like an example, if we know we're moving pigs over there, I know some other coordinators ask for templates of newsletters or templates of bulletins, or some of those kind of things can be shared, and I think we're all more than willing, no reason to reinvent the wheel. But I think, you know, if we could make it so that that producer can report to me and I can share it to Sonya, so they don't have to report to two different coordinators. There's some things that could probably be done to streamline some things to make less work for everybody.
Sure.
But otherwise, I try to spread information. So if there's a specific process or something that I see working or working well, I try to spread that around and make sure other people are doing it. And I also try to make sure that no one project coordinator has to be the guinea pig on any crazy idea. So they have one crazy idea to work on and not all of them. So Kayla's been more of a guinea pig with regard to BioPortal, and Sonya's been more of the guinea pig regarding the SAD database. So, and trying to learn from each other then now as we're trying to more implement some new things as well. So
we've got this question, and it's not going to be the last question because I don't want to end on this note, but it's what are your greatest sources of frustration?
Communication, for me. And just because I have over 50 producers to communicate with. And so we have somewhat gotten rid of that hurdle by me. If it's an independent producer and they're just not great at emailing or calling, I'm talking directly with their herd veterinarian as opposed to reaching out to them, because a lot of times they just don't get back to me. And it doesn't mean that they're not looking at my emails and that there was no change or that they're not seeing it, but they just don't get back to me. So communication has been hard for our project just because there are so many people involved. But we've done better to kind of work with the herd veterinarians on those smaller producers.
I see a lot of heads nodding. Is there anything else?
I think even for me, I only have 6 in one and 8 producers in the other, and it's still difficult to get everybody to reply every month. You know, every vet for those producers have their own thing going on, and there are months that not everybody replies. So,
any advice for a new coordinator? What would you tell them?
It's not a sprint; it's a marathon.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
true.
I'm all about sound bites.
Yeah.
So we'll finish up with this one. Dr. Lowe, what are the top 2 or 3 keys to success?
So I have the benefit of seeing not just these projects, but other projects across the country. And I think one of the benefits, or one of the keys to success, is that the group has to really want to work together. So if there's a lot of animosity, if there's a lot of personal conflict or personality conflicts within projects, or a lot of baggage from history in an area. So-and-so took this barn from me after some outbreak, and now I'm still mad about it 10 years later. those projects struggle to get off the ground because the people just can't come to consensus and pull the project forward. So I think that's one key to success. And the second key to success is having somebody actually paying attention to it and grabbing the data on a routine basis or reporting that data out or keeping the conversation moving. So I think those are the two big things to keep these projects successful.
Good. Sonya, I don't think you should ever apologize for working more with people and not pigs, because we all know, everybody in this room knows, if it was just pigs, it'd be easy.
Yeah.
That's so very true.
Right.
And before we end,
Got a question?
we can't have an operas without a question from Dr. Lowe. So please.
I have one comment and one question. Sorry about my voice. But one, Sonya has done a good job of getting producers up there sometimes and show their latest truck wash or bench system going in finishing barns and have them talk about it, or their filter project. So sometimes the producer has been a good speaker at those, even though, not a lot of preparation, but just standing up and talking about it. I think that's gone good. Erin, I would like to have you have Dave Wright talk about how he's trying to change health papers coming into the region. I think if I let him talk for a little bit.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Dave Wright. I'm the coordinator for the North 212 project that Andres spoke about and Pablo has been working with. And I'll just make a couple of comments. We share some of the same frustrations and enthusiasms that have been represented here. Last spring, our North 212 group had a series of PRRS outbreaks, and we were the only one in the country that broke the epidemic threshold as late in the year as we did. And that prompted at our regional meetings a discussion about what's next. Is there something that we should be doing more and that we can do more? And we've had a series of meetings with, again, it's voluntary. This is not going to be something that's going to be a federal program. We're stuck with it, managing it within the industry. But out of these meetings that are producer-led, we have got a couple of proposals on the table. One is non-controversial. One is one of the things that we can do as our coordinator, or that we think that we can do, is helping to find place pigs in finishing sites that all of a sudden are looking for negative pigs. Sometimes they're in an area that's close to a sow farm, and we can help to advertise, if you would, that these sites are available and they're looking for negative pigs. So that's one of the things that we've done within the project to help move safe pigs within an area. The other is more controversial, and this is one that we have put before our Minnesota Pork Board and also in their executive committee. And most recently, we have presented to the Minnesota Swine Health Task Force. And they feel that it's got enough merit to present it to the rest of our Minnesota pork producers. And what we're contemplating doing in the proposal that is basically presented to pork producers in Minnesota is whether or not they might be interested in having all the pigs coming into the state identified with the herd of origin, the status of those pigs coming into the state of Minnesota, both for PRRS and PD. It can be positive, negative, unknown, whatever it is. So unknown is still a possibility. There are 15 million pigs that are finished in Minnesota, and there are 7 million pigs that come into the state, out of state, from outside the state. And none of them, we don't have any idea what the status of those pigs are. And we feel, as we've evolved through this, that this might be a real good opportunity for Minnesota producers to get a better handle on what's going on. These are in the preliminary stages. Wisconsin has done something similar, but they only have 150,000 pigs that come into their state, so it's not much of a deal for them. But this is something, again, it's producer-led. The discussion has started, and it's something that we're trying to do to add some value to Minnesota pig producers.
All right. Well, I think with that, we'll just say that the speakers will be around for the reception, which starts in about 10 minutes, and you'll be able to view the posters that were submitted. And so everybody head down that way. And Erin and ladies, thank you very, very much for this last presentation.
Thank you.